This interview is brought to you by the 21-Day Challenge. And if you're an entrepreneur or a high achiever, you're an influencer, you want to get your message out to more people, you want to impact more people, we have our 21-Day Challenge. It'll light you on fire, get you crystal clear on those big dreams and goals, and help you really dial in your message and your mission, okay? So that's the 21-Day Challenge. Send me a message if you're ready to embark on that journey, chris@beyourgps.com, or find me on Facebook and message me there. Cool or cool? Very cool. Now, we're going to be moving to the iTunes review of the week. This week, it's by Morgana Ray. And Morgana says, OMG, Chris has the greatest energy in the world. Thank you. I really appreciate how much love and care he brings to his interviews. That's it. That's the whole thing. Thank you so much, Morgana, for seeing that and seeing how much we care about you and the people who tune into the show and making this the best possible experience for everyone involved. And if you want to give us a review, go to beyourgps.com/iTunes, and you can give us a review there, or search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self on the iTunes store and leave us a review. Thanks so much in advance for doing that. Now, we're getting to the main course of this hour, so to speak. Patrice is going to be coming on here in just a second. Again, have a pen, have a paper handy, be ready to take notes, be ready to receive the wisdom this woman is about to deliver onto your lap, because it's going to be immense, it's going to be profound, and her stories, her journey is going to make the impact in your life, okay? So stick around for this entire hour, because the gold comes when you least expect it, okay? It's really, really common. So Patrice Lynn, we're going to bring her on in a second. For over 25 years, Patrice Lynn has helped thousands of people to grow personally and professionally as a speaker, learning specialist, and results coach. She has seen the model for success evolve as advances in science and spirituality have shifted our paradigms. Her book, Rise to Success, is a response to a rallying cry from people just like you. Curious about how to utilize neuroscience, mental imagery, and laws of physics to create freedom and success on your own terms. And we're blessed to have her here with us today. Patrice, are you ready to rock this?
I'm ready. Yay!
She's ready. Awesome. We're now live on Become Your Greatest Possible Self. Thanks so much for showing up today and being here to generate some awesome wisdom with our audience and help us rise to success. You're amazing at what you do, and thank you for taking time to share with our audience. We appreciate you.
All right.
We're diving in.
Happy
We're diving
to be
in.
Here. Happy to be here.
We're diving in. So the main question that we always start with is the question of the day. And today it's how to own yourself. So Patrice, how do you recommend we go about owning ourselves? And how do you own yourself?
Well, that is a very deep question. That is really important. I mean, I feel like it's been like a lifetime journey to own myself and to heal. I mean, I started out with some tough things in my life. I was born into a family where there was physical, verbal abuse, and my parents divorced when I was 2. I had my first head injury when I was 6 years old, and that was kind of traumatic too. And then later at 17, I had a near-death experience because I had a kidney disease that I almost died from. And so I had to overcome that. And then along the way, there's just been a lot of challenges, a lot of trauma. And I really dealt with a lot of mental health issues. And what happened is I really made a career out of personal and professional development as a way to rise above the challenges that life had given me. Wow. I think that's really the main way that you own yourself, is really getting to know yourself, getting to know what has impacted you in the past, that shaped your belief systems, that shaped your identity, and then taking the steps that you need to take to change your identity, change your belief systems. And that's one of the things I talk about in my book, is about belief systems. Wow. I think that's a big part of it, just really knowing yourself. And then also, I think another thing is finding out what your strengths are. I'm a big believer in the Now Discover Your Strengths profile. And when I did that, I felt like when I found out my top 5 strengths, like my number 1 strength is learner. I love to learn, and I love to teach people what I learned. So no wonder I got into a career where I'm teaching things to people, doing training, doing seminars, speaking and teaching, because that's how I'm wired. I just love it.
Wow, I love that. And I took the strengths test, strengths finder as well. Super, super powerful. And
Yes.
one thing you mentioned about the identity, that is so powerful. And I'm surprised we haven't really touched on that today in owning who you are. The term identity and belief systems in general. It's like we've more so talked about like, okay, well, like sit quietly and listen. It's kind of like the ethereal spiritual version. And then there's
Okay.
also the neuroscience, which you're an expert in. So I really
Yes.
love that we're covering that in your interview, because that's such a big part, is like there's a literal wiring and firing of our
Yes.
brain and our mind to produce certain actions and have us behave the way that we do and feel certain
Yeah.
emotions, and the reason why we have the life that we have, and like who we are, who is I, right? What is the I? And you've studied that so much. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited to be diving into that with this interview with you, Patrice. It's gonna be
Okay.
awesome. It's gonna be awesome.
Great.
Yes, yeah. So let's dive into a little bit more about your journey. You mentioned some of your journey, but how did you really develop into this speaker, into the trainer, into this coach and teacher, mentor? Like
Yeah.
like tell us more about that journey, some of the challenges that you faced along it.
Okay, it started really early, actually. I grew up going to church, and I remember I was part of I was in a youth group,
Mhm.
and they said, "Oh, this week is Youth Sunday. Who wants to give the sermon?" And I'm like, I do." And all my friends
Yes.
were looking at me like, "You do?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it was like then that I started to realize that not everybody is excited to get up there at a microphone and speak
Wow.
to people.
Wow.
And I was terrible. I mean, I was boring, and I was like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I had the courage and the boldness to do it.
Wow.
And so what happened then over the years, like when uh, it was pretty early on that I had a period of time where I was married and I owned a bar and restaurant. I went to college, but I
Mhm.
was in Montana, so everything was all about the outdoors and adventure.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I got married and I owned a bar and restaurant out in the middle of nowhere. It was kind of like
Wow.
picture the Raiders of the Lost Ark in the opening scene.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what my life was like. And then that changed, and I had little stint selling art, but then
Mhm.
I got remarried and I had the
Mm.
time to I spent a month contemplating my life and
Wow.
thinking, okay, what am I naturally talented in?
Mm.
What do I want to do as far as give a gift to people?
Mhm.
And how could I make a living? Now, I lived in this town, Bozeman, Montana. It was like 50, 60,000 people, very remote.
Yeah.
And I came up with this idea after reading and journaling and sitting by the creek and gazing at the mountains for literally a month
Mhm.
that I was going to start my own seminar company.
Wow.
And I did just that. And it was funny because the people that knew me, they said, "Oh my gosh, you're going to be great," because they knew that I like to learn and teach people
Mhm.
things and I
Mhm.
was organized. As a matter of fact, I started with office organization and time management.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
where I started. But the people that didn't know me, because I was literally the first person in that town to do that
Mhm.
business, they said, "You're gonna do what?" Like, nobody's and I was like, "Oh, yeah." And I mean, it was a really amazing how when you really take action in the direction of your natural talent, your
Yeah.
giftings, doors open. And before I knew it, I went to a career track seminar and I met this guy, Skip Everett, and he was teaching a time management workshop. And he said he loved this about me because I went up to him and I said, "Oh, I teach time management too, and I'm really interested in learning from you."
Mm.
And he says, "Oh," he said, "that was so great. Most people like sit in the back of the room and they take all your ideas and they run out the room and they never admit what they're doing." And he
Right.
goes, "You just came right up to me." He goes, "I love that about you." And so then he had just read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and
Mm.
he said,
I
"I'm
love it.
going to this training." I mean, the book had literally just come out.
Wow.
And I made a mental note of that. I ended up going to that training in my town with some clients. They had me come, and afterwards I said, "Oh, I have to be able to teach this."
Yeah.
So I'll never forget, I called him up and I said, "When is that training you're going to go to?" And he said, "Oh, it's this such and such week in May."
Mm.
And I opened my calendar and my whole calendar was booked every single week, but the week of that training was
Wow.
totally blank.
Wow.
And I just, in my heart, I went, okay, this is happening. This is definitely happening.
Yep.
And I became the first 5 independent consultants to teach the 7 habits. I got to meet Stephen Covey. As a matter of fact, I have a quote from him on my cover of my book. And then it just kind of went from there. So I started going into companies and training. I would do these public courses, but then they would invite me to come in. And then later on, I ended up moving, and I went to Denver, Boulder area, and that's where Career Track was based out of, which now they're Fred Pryor. And I remember I got a contract going and teaching like management and leadership stuff and like lean manufacturing kind of thing. And I remember it was an all-day seminar, and you're lecturing and everybody's sitting there, and I was like, people were falling asleep, because I'm just talking the whole day and they're supposed to pay attention and learn something. And I remember in my mind, I went, okay, there's got to be a better way than this. And right after that, I met these women that were experts on the brain and accelerated learning, and they understood how the brain works, how people learn. And that was not only how I got started in understanding a very dynamic way to teach people, but also started learning about the brain. That was really when it started for me.
Wow.
And I call myself a brain training expert because I started then, and then I've gone on to learn a lot about the brain. Wow. That's really a good summary, I would say. And so now, I did a keynote speech not that long ago, and I was warrior woman, and I dressed up with a tunic, and I had a sword, and I showed movies of Braveheart, and I did skits, and I had people hold up signs like anxious, worry, anxiety, worry, depression. And I took my sword and I sliced and diced them, and they fell down to the ground. And I was illustrating a lot of things of what we need to do in our mind, but using props and people and things like that. And so it's been a really fun evolution. I'd like to do more of that with my book, Rise to Success, and just use multimedia and engage people and involve people to teach them the principles.
That's incredible. I love how in your journey, you just it's in like one door opened up every next door, you just kept showing up and taking the steps, and it led to you understanding the brain and like really becoming a master with that, and like how it works, and being able to teach people and train people with their brains. And I think that that's so fascinating. I want to talk a little bit more about, what was some of the resistance that you experienced along the journey? Because how you make it sound is it was like this smooth, comfortable, enjoyable journey and ride,
Well, when you have your own business, you have to really get out there and market and promote yourself. And fortunately, when I very first started, it was easy because it was a small town, and I started having a lot of success. And my reputation really grew. But then when I moved, I started moving a lot. And when I moved, I had to kind of always start over. So I've essentially had like a startup business every, few years.
Wow.
And so that is the hard part. And that's why I'm just now really tapping into the internet and the online world, because then it doesn't matter where you live, right? So you can create your presence online, and then you're not stuck in a certain geographic area where you have to market yourself. So that the marketing has always been the most challenging part for me.
But it's interesting because it's almost like you created opportunities and challenges for yourself to have to redo the marketing again and again and again.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, it's fun and challenging. And if you have a brain like mine that likes to be challenged, it's great, but it isn't always the best for the cash flow when you're starting over. And then of course I've changed even my topics and things like that. And so along the way, I've learned a lot. I guess I'm just not one of those people that likes to do the same old thing. I just always have to have variety and challenge and adventure. And that's just how I'm wired. I'm happier that way.
I love it, Patrice. This is awesome. Awesome. And, we've reached our 15-minute mark in the show, in the interview. So we're going to do our first GPS game. And for everyone who's tuning in, you can tag 3 people and share this to your profile, and you will get entered into a chance to win a free self-help book for the day. So go ahead and do that, and make sure you register for the contest. And Patrice, let's start diving into the rise and what that's all about, and really this understanding our brain and the immense capacity that we have within ourselves, within our brain? Where do we start with this?
Well, oh gosh, I like to say that I help people become the MVP of their own rise to success. So I've developed like a 3-part system where it's about not just being the most valuable player in your life, but you are that as well.
Right.
And so it's a little bit of a takeoff on the MVP term, and it means shifting your mindset and unleashing your vision so you can profit in business and in life.
Beautiful.
And the rise fits in that first part is really about the mindset. And that's my revolutionary RISE system. And RISE is actually an acronym. So it stands for repetition, images, sounds, and emotion. And that's like a way of realizing that everything you think, see, say, and feel really impacts your results and impacts the quality of your life.
I was who was I was talking to Jeannie Cisco Meth, who came on earlier, and she talked about how she has these declarations and this process in the morning, a routine, right, in the morning. And she mentioned that she uses smells. She was using like essential oils and stuff, and I know that like connects to our our brain. It's one of the strongest senses that connects to our brain to reprogram our mind and neural pathways and stuff like that. Because I know you mentioned repetition, images, sounds, and emotion. So I'm just curious, did you think of well, smells good, and like what do people use the most? Is it's images and it's sounds and it's emotion? Is that kind of why you went with those ones?
Yes, but interestingly enough, when we go to the image part, because the idea is that your brain really doesn't understand the difference between what you see with your eyes in the world around you and what you close your eyes and imagine in your brain. It really can't distinguish that. So what I am really big on is getting people to actually close their eyes and visualize what they want. And then now, Chris, is when the 5 senses come in, because when you visualize your future that you want to pull towards you by imagining it so clearly and so vividly and so sensually that you're using all the senses. So you're using the sound and what are you hearing? What are you smelling? What are you tasting? What are you touching? What are you feeling? And actually the feeling is the most important part, because if you envision yourself and you envision yourself doing something, like I mentioned that story about when I was going to hear Dr. Joe Dispenza speak, and I envisioned myself getting to get into a sold out event, asking him a question, getting my picture taken with him. And when I envisioned it, I used all my senses and I felt what it would feel like and how happy and excited I would feel when that came about. So it's absolutely critical to use your senses, because because that activates more regions of your brain.
Right.
And then your brain is like, because literally this is one of the things I'm the most passionate about, is that people do not realize that you can literally pull your future towards you. But it's almost like you have to have the imagination like you did as a child. Remember when you were a child, anything was possible. And that's the kind of thing you have to kind of recapture that. But as people become adults, they lose that. They lose that creativity, that imagination. In my book, one of my favorite stories is about Walt Disney, because of course he's the king of creativity and imagination. And it's really fascinating when you know the whole story about how the things that he created. And so he started in Anaheim with Disneyland, but right away, almost as soon as he got it going, he's like, I don't want to be encumbered by this city that's around. And he goes, I have to find a place where I can do the same thing, but have it be a lot bigger and a lot more fun and a lot more family oriented than it can be here. And he started figuring out in his mind, and he realized that Florida was the place. Now at the time, all that land he bought was all swampy and screwed up, and nobody would build it. So he secretly started buying these parcels of land, because he knew that if anybody knew what he was doing, it would never happen.
Right.
And of course, he envisioned it all. He got it built. But what I think is fantastic is that he actually died before it opened. And his brother, Roy Disney, who was with him his whole life, was standing there dedicating it to Walt Disney. And this businessman was there and he said, it's too bad that Walt could not have seen this. And Roy looked at him and he said, what do you mean? He said, he did see it. That's why it's here.
Yeah.
So in his mind, he imagined the whole thing. He created it in his mind, and then he just pulled it into reality.
Wow.
And that's the potential that we all have, is to pull things into reality. I mean, I've done it so many times. I know it's possible.
Well, tell us a little bit more about the, the process of that. Because it's like, okay, we see it in our mind, but like, tell us about how do we take something from in the mind or a fantasy or a dream and actually bring it into reality?
Well, interestingly enough, it does take, I believe, a process and a daily process. And that's why I created my Rise to Success journal.
Yes.
Because you really need to spend, I feel like, minimum. I understand people have a lot of programs out there, and there's a lot of time that might need to be invested, 45 minutes or an hour or hour and a half. And I thought, gosh, people have to have something that's going to be more doable. So mine's 15 minutes. And later I'll explain how you can buy the journal, but I also have a downloadable thing for free. So people can start using it, which is a great thing for the new year to start out.
Yes.
So what I have is, Rise correlates with the journal. So you write out your goals, 3 goals that you're working on. Then in the images part, you write out a little mini movie, like a script. Okay. Like if Disney were doing it, he would say, I envision this big piece of land where I can build Disney World, and it's going to have this and that. It's going to have the future, and it's going to have what do you call it? That gardening where they, with water,
hydroponics.
What's that called? Hydroponics, yeah. And it was going to have this big futuristic hydroponic. He imagined all these things. So if you were Disney, you would be writing out the script, the details, and then you close your eyes, and for 2 minutes, okay, now it's a little bit less than that, but it's been scientifically proven. You have to hold the image. But I say, okay, let's do it 2 minutes. So if you hold that image for 2 minutes, there's something that clicks in your brain, because so you can't just think about it and then let that thought go away. You have to focus and hold your focus on it for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it will start coming in. I mean, it's really so simple, but again, if you don't know about it, you don't know to do it. And then the other part is the declarations, like you mentioned, is the sound, and then the emotion. Because see, to create the life that we want and to have the right mindset, we really do have to have a positive vibration going. And the way to get that positive vibration going is to elevate your emotional state, your mental and emotional state. So you're feeling good most of the time.
Right.
Well, in order to feel good, there's a lot of different strategies, but the easiest one is to start being grateful for things. Because if you're in gratitude, you really can't feel bad. And if you're feeling bad and then you start getting grateful and thankful for things in your life, you'll lift your vibration up. And that's the last part of the process. But yeah, so I have a lot of detail about how to do it more specifically, but that's the essence of it.
That's the process, the overview of the process. That's incredible. I love it. So we talked about really setting those goals, affirming what the goals are, writing out the script of that, closing our eyes and seeing that, doing the declarations and feeling those emotions, and putting the sound out into the universe. That's like we're literally changing matter, right? By speaking and shifting.
Because we can call the things that be not as though they are.
Wow.
And see, all of it goes back to repetition. So repetition is the first R word. And really that is important for all of these things. Okay. Now, one of the things that I talk about in my book that I think is so fantastic is I actually, of course, I've been studying personal and professional development for over 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, I started writing and thinking about beliefs, and people talk about beliefs all the time. And I was like, wait a minute, how is a belief even formed? Like, where does a belief come from? Kind of like a thought. Like, where does a thought come from? That's another conversation. A thought is chemicals and electricity. That's what makes a thought. But your beliefs are those thoughts that you think over and over and over with enough intensity and duration and frequency that it pops into a belief.
Wow.
And when I realized that, I was like, wow, okay, that's why these kind of things work, is that you're repeating what you want to have happen versus what you don't want to have happen.
Right.
Over and over and over with more frequency and intensity. And you really do have to discipline yourself. I mean, it's like working out.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be in shape, but you've got to do something to get it. I mean, maybe there's a few people that are just genetically gifted. They don't ever gain weight but for the most part, you don't just get in shape one time and then you're in shape. You have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so this is really like a workout for your brain. And you have to keep focused on the things that you want. And then through repetition, they'll start to turn into beliefs, which really helps to create the reality that you want when you believe it's possible. And you think about it and imagine it and say it. And
I'm curious, Patrice, what might get in the way of like really as quickly as possible getting these beliefs installed in people's minds?
Well, that's a key point because, see, when I talk about unleashing your vision, it's really about removing the internal resistance that blocks that desired future. Okay, so imagine, like, say you have a line here that's your current reality, and then you have a line up here that's your vision. So here's where you are, here's where you want to be. Well, you can put forces in place to get yourself up here, what we might call driving forces.
Okay.
But what's important to realize is there's restraining forces that are pushing down on your vision that are keeping it from happening. And some of those I'm going to refer to my book because I have them listed here.
Sure.
So limiting beliefs, incorrect paradigms, destructive cellular memory. So like I talked about the trauma I had early in my life. Those memories are stored in your cells. And so I'm a big believer in energy healing, quantum mechanics, because that's how you can get those cellular memories out of your cells. And any unhealed trauma is going to hold you back.
Right.
Then low vibration emotions like fear and worry and depression, those will hold you back. Negative memory pictures. So if you have some traumatic things that happen in your life and you have them on, because everything, from what I've heard, everything in your life is stored in your brain as a picture.
Right.
Everything that's happened, because we know our brain has this huge capacity. And so to really heal and release the negative images that we have going. And then poor self-identity, which is where we started. Like, how do you see yourself? What's your identity? How have you labeled yourself? And then even things like excuses and procrastination.
Wow.
I mean, and procrastination is something that I've had to deal with because I'm organized and I like things to look good and I'm very quality oriented. But, procrastination paralyzes progress. And so if you get, and I've had this happen to me where I've gotten too wrapped up in doing it perfectly and then it doesn't get done or I'm working on it, but I'm not taking the action.
Yeah.
And that's been something I've had to work on a lot.
Yeah. So
those are all good examples of resistance that can hold us back.
Like, how do we know which one is stopping us? How do we identify the weakest link, so to speak, the leverage point that will take us to the next level of success?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I mean, when I work with people, I help them do that. That's where I think coaching and getting into group coaching, individual coaching, classes like master classes, boot camps, things like that. I think there's an energy that happens. I know there's an energy that happens when people come together to go to that next level, to rise above what's holding them back And it's in those times that you can really start to identify it, because your conscious mind is telling your subconscious mind, okay, what's going on? I do have to admit, some things can be very hidden. They can be very hidden, and it can take a lot of work. But see, that's why I'm a big believer in a lot of the quantum science, because and quantum healing and things like that, because you can have really powerful shifts really quickly.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Is that something you get into in the work that you do, the quantum science and healing? Do you educate your clients on that?
Yes. Well, I do talk about it in my book, but I actually feel like that would be the subject of kind of another book that I'll do, because I don't get into it in depth, or also not necessarily books, but classes that I'll do and things like that. Because again, there's like this it's an incredible ability in a group to do healing. And so I think that those are the kind of things, because it's not necessarily something you can just read about, although some people like to read, some people like to listen. But I think if I get people in a group, and I feel like I'm really kind of being pushed in this direction, like I feel like that I have a lot to offer, because I have had so many things that I've had to heal and overcome, and wow, it's really been something. And I just feel like I can help assist people and there's so many different modalities. I mean, you've got EFT, you've got the healing codes, you've got all these different things and ways that you can access some of this. So I want to educate people more. I actually, on my YouTube channel, I have a video on how cellular memory is a key to your health. Is on there. So it's like a talk I did at a health conference about cellular memory.
That's incredible. I love it. I love it. So we covered the RISE acronym, which is repetition, images, sounds, and emotion. Tell us about the MVP acronym, because I know that's a part of it as well.
Yes, that's kind of the bigger picture. So it's about shifting your mindset and rewiring what you think, see, say, and feel. And that is actually the mindset piece, is where the RISE fits into the mindset piece. And then the vision is really more that model I was telling you, the current reality, the vision, and the driving forces and the restraining forces. And I like to focus on the internal ones, because there's external resistance, but a lot of times we can't do a lot about that, but we can do a lot about the internal resistance. And then the profit. So, because the idea is that if you get your mindset right and then you unleash your vision. So it isn't just about clarifying your vision. It's about unleashing it, where you remove some of the resistance. And that's the part that I think a lot of people don't focus on. I was reading something today. Of course, I'm always reading and learning things online. And I can't remember who it was saying it, but they said that really only about 3% is clarifying your vision. And that a bigger percent is the thing I'm talking about, which is removing the resistance to it. That's a bigger deal. But I also do think that a lot of people aren't really clear about what they want. And that's something that's really important too, is to help people get clear.
One thing I love about this is I think a lot of people are expecting their vision to like hit themselves in the face, right? Like smack them across the face. Like, here's your vision, here's your purpose. And I think that it's more of a intuitive knowing and feeling and belief that we're already on purpose with our purpose. Like like even like what you're mentioning is more about lining your being up and your paradigm up with that. You are already in alignment. You already have clarity on your vision. Your clarity is that you're getting more clarity on your vision. You're you know, like I think that just like changing that and saying every day, affirming, this is one thing that I would do to get clarity on my version, is like my vision is to say, I'm getting clarity on this. I'm so crystal clear on my vision and I live it out every day. I'm so crystal clear on my purpose and I live it every day. And it's like, I think what you're referring to is that people are blocked just to say that they have the clarity that they desire, to affirm that into existence, to declare that into existence. And they're waiting for something to happen, like for the 3% to, you know, hit them across the side of the face.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And then when it comes to profit, now
Yeah.
I think of most of the time when you say profit,
Mhm.
it's really more about money. People think about money.
Right.
I think that there's a lot, there's a lot to profit because it can be in business and life. I mean, to profit means to gain, to benefit,
Right.
and it's about prosperity in
Yeah.
all areas of your life. I mean, mind, body, and spirit.
Yes.
And it's really a word that I like because it's a positive word,
Yeah.
even though a lot of times it's associated with business, but it's about being present and powerful and prosperous, and I mean all these other P words that it could be that that really make it all up. And of course, I've done a lot of business training. I actually owned a business coaching franchise with
Yeah.
Action Coach,
Yeah.
and I've worked with a lot of business owners, and I've learned a tremendous amount about business and about how to help people focus on the profit. That's something we called 5 steps to profit in any economy. And so it could be about business, but it could be just about your life in general. As we know, there's plenty of people that are financially successful, but they're not really happy. So to me, it's about health, wealth, and happiness, because without your health, you don't, I mean, all the money in the world. Like my one friend, Anne Louise Gilman, she's a famous nutritionist, and she said people spend their health to get wealth.
Yep.
And then later in life, they spend their wealth to get their health. And because see, I almost died of a kidney disease when I was 17, and I made a choice at that young age that I would never let a doctor be in charge of my health again.
Wow.
And I went out, I started studying alternative health, reading all these books, doing all these crazy things, skin brushing, colonics, nutrition, yoga. I mean, I've been doing yoga like, I don't know, 30 years, 35, a long time. Yeah. So I laugh because of course, when I was younger, I was more capable of certain things, and I go to yoga class and I see these people. I'm like, some of these people weren't even born when I started doing yoga. But I do think it's a fountain of youth. And so anyway, my point is that it's got to be health, wealth, and happiness. And my friend Alex Lloyd, who wrote the Healing Codes, he said he's worked with so many people in Nashville that are very successful musicians and business people, and he goes, they have all the money in the world, but they're not happy. And so that to me is what my program is about. And all throughout my book, I talk about that. Success is living your life in your own way that you want. And it's defining it the way that you want. It's not what somebody else thinks is success, but what do you think is success?
Yeah, I love it, Patrice, and you have so many different expertises. I love the the eclectic wisdom and how you really apply it, whether it's business, whether it's mindset, whether it's like the neuroscience, whether it's the physics, quantum physics. You got a lot of really cool things that you package together, and I'm just curious for our listeners, like what would you say is the thing that makes you unique? With all these different perspectives and things that you have at your arsenal, so to speak, and in your toolkit and your tool belt. How would you say that you're unique and different from other coaches or mindset coaches and different things like that, so our audience can know kind of why they would come to you now?
Yes. Well, when I wrote my book, I went through some training programs, and that was actually one of the things they made us identify. They said, what is your expertise? And boy, that's not the easiest thing for somebody like me that likes so many different things.
Right.
And then I realized, like, I'm writing a book about training your brain, but yet I was like, well, I'm not a brain expert. I'm not a neuroscientist or some, PhD, whatever. Although I feel like I could have a PhD at this point in my life.
Right.
But then I realized when you combine what I've learned about how people learn and how to design training, like I have work that I've done to teach people how to design training using accelerated learning and whole brain learning.
That's awesome.
And making it much more interesting than most training is. And the thing is, I learned these things like 20 years ago, and I'm just shocked at how the common lecture is still the main mode that we're using to teach people things. I mean, crazy. So anyway, when I realized that, and then I worked with people with ADHD, and I wrote some things about that, and I realized, wow, I really know a lot about the brain, but really from a standpoint of learning. So I call myself a brain training expert.
Right.
And that's really my expertise, is both training the brain as a person individually, but then also understanding how to create training environments that are whole brain and that based on how people learn. So I'm a brain training expert. That's really
it's like what is it called, a double entendre? It's like there's two different meanings.
Yeah.
Like you train people's
Exactly.
brains with your wisdom and your expertise and
Yeah.
neuroscience info, and you also teach people how to train brains. You know,
How to design training that
Yes.
caters to people's brains. And like the two things that get most overlooked are getting the body involved and getting emotion involved. And that when things are emotional, like most everybody listening now can probably remember where they were when 9/11 happened.
Yep.
And it was so emotional that what happens is when something's that extremely emotional, all these chemicals get released in the brain, and it lays down a pathway in your brain. And if you take the electricity and those chemicals, it put a groove in there. Like every single person can remember where they were, what was happening, seeing it for the first time. And so that's really important. And when it comes to learning, the more emotional it is. Now, obviously, you don't want to create a severe trauma like that in a training environment, but the best way to create emotion in training is to have fun, is to help people have fun.
Right.
And that's the best way. So having fun, emotion, and then getting the body involved are the two things that are most overlooked in most training environments.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. In your journey to really empowering people to evolve their beliefs and become their greatest possible self, what else do we need to know to really rise to our greatest success? What else is important along the journey?
Well, I think the basics of quantum physics, and the other thing that I do have a really good ability to do is take concepts that could be complicated and make them simple and easy for people to understand. So in my book, I talk about the basics of neuroscience and the basics of quantum physics. And many people, like I got my degree in college in science. I have a Bachelor of Science, so I love science. But not everybody is science minded.
Right.
And I just wanted to make it simple. So I talked about three types of quantum physics. So quantum superposition is the power of focus. And then quantum entanglement is the power of relationships. And then the quantum Zeno effect is the power of mind over matter.
Wow.
Quantum entanglement is one of the coolest things you can ever learn about, because that means that there are many things happening off your radar screen. Like let's say you and I, let's say we set goals, or everybody listening set goals for this year of what they want to accomplish. Well, we all have a radar screen. Like imagine like that kind of bullseye, and we've all seen those little radar screens on the airplane, right?
Yep.
And you see whatever's on your radar screen is what you know and are aware of. Like you're aware of how much money's in your bank account. You're aware of what support team you have, what technology you have, what opportunities are out there. You have this kind of radar screen. But quantum entanglement is the idea that this is why it's so important to do the RISE journal process and the RISE to Success process, because when you envision what you want, all these things that are outside your radar screen, all these people and ideas and opportunities and money and all these things, they're all out there. And see, the more clear that we get, then we start attracting them to us. And there's things like the reticular activating system in your brain. As soon as you get really, really clear and you tell your brain what you want, then your brain will go to work to find it and bring it to you. And so those are the kind of things I think are really super important, because and like one of the guys that he went to one of my trainings, and I just did like a talk at a real estate office, and then he got my book and he started reading it, and he said, right away I decided that I wanted to reconnect with this person that I hadn't seen in a while. And he goes, and I went over to the store right in the shopping center where our real estate office is. And she walked in the store and he was just blown away because he's
Wow.
like, I did exactly what you said. I focused on it. I imagined it. And there she was off my radar screen. Then I put her on my radar screen and then there she was.
Wow. Oh
So
my
those are the
gosh.
kind of things that that's what makes life magical. I mean,
Yeah.
this whole thing, it really leads to that whole idea that life can be very magical and even supernatural, but it's backed by science. And that's the thing, because some people have a hard time with the supernatural, but if you back it by science, and other people don't, other people are into the supernatural, but they don't really understand the science that proves that it really works.
Right. And it's important to have like both, you know, the science and kind of the faith and the spirituality.
The spiritual realm. Yes, absolutely.
Super important. So that's great. You know, I really love how you explain the different types of physics that you get involved in your book, and you teach people about so that we can have more logic, you know, to support why things happen. And I think if we understand the laws of the universe, the fundamentals of the universe, then we can really take better action. We can take more educated action that creates the results that we want, and not feel like we're, you know, shooting in the dark or missing our targets, or, you know, winding up at the end of our life with regrets, or, you know, feeling like we didn't do it right.
That's why I was really inspired to write this book, because along the way I had learned so many things and I'd had so many incredible experiences, and I'm like, people have to know about this. They have to understand that these things are laws of nature that are working, but we have to learn how to work with it and how to make it really happen.
Yeah. So how can people really start putting these laws and these principles and everything that we talked about in this interview? How can they start putting it into action?
Well, on my website, which is patricelynn.com, I have a lot of free gifts. Actually, I have the download version of the Rise journal. So see that I do have the journals for sale too, but the text in here, I have it on a 8.5 by 11 page with 2 days per page, and so you could actually print it out and make your own notebook with it, and then you can start doing this. Then I have an audio course that I give an overview of the Rise philosophy. It's about like 13 minutes. And then I teach you then how to use the journal. And then I have a 2-minute breathing exercise, because you want your brain to get in a relaxed brainwave state before you do the process, because then your brain, like we were talking about the other day, it's more receptive to the programming. So I have a 2-minute recording, and then I have a 2-minute visualization. And we were talking about this the other day, because I actually use my own visualization when I do my 2-minute process every day, because you don't want to have a timer, or you don't want to have to think about it. And so what I do is I made this 2-minute recording. So I put this all into a course, an audio course, and I normally charge $147 for it, but today I made it half price, kind of a New Year's special for all your listeners.
Thank you.
So they can get it for $67. Awesome. And then, of course, my book is on Amazon.
Okay.
And then I would say, and the other thing I have, this is really good. So on the homepage of my website and the tab that says free gifts, I have a sheet, and it's 16 tips and techniques to train your brain. Awesome. And they're categorized by Rise, images, sound, emotion. A lot of what we talked about is in there. It's summarized. So that's just a free gift I have for people. So the main thing would be probably go to my website and sign up for the free things, or buy the other things that I have available, or my book. And then once you're on my mailing list, then I'll be sending out notices. Like I'm putting together a webinar that's going to be a way to explain all this to people. And then I'll have other programs too that people could invest in to have ongoing training and then some group coaching and things like that.
Wow, so many exciting things you got going on, Patrice. It's
Thank you.
epic, epic.
Oh,
We
thank
we
you.
had Christina in the audience who asked, "What's the name of your book?" So I put it in there: "Rise to Success: Retrain Your Brain, Recharge Your Life, Results in 15 Minutes." Right? Like,
Yes.
it's on Amazon. Christina, go buy it. It's gonna rock your world because Patrice is just like so quality, puts the most amazing things together. I love it. I love it.
Well, and I have had people tell me that it's like a primer of personal development. It's really a substantial book. It's pretty much everything I've learned in 25 years of being in this field. And then people also say they really like that I tell a lot of stories. So I tell other people's stories and my stories to really help it come to life. And because stories are really how we learn. And if you teach a point and then you can tell a story to illustrate it. And I remember one guy that reviewed it, he said, well, I thought this was just going to be another one of those warmed over, law of attraction things. And he goes, boy, I was really wrong. This is like very fresh material.
Love it.
And he said it was also stories and things that he had never heard.
Wow.
So that really made me feel good.
Yeah, and like having that unique perspective that it hasn't been done before. What you're doing, Patrice, has not been done before. You're putting it together in a way that really reaches people in a new way, combining different worlds so that we're able to understand these fundamentals, these laws, and really be able to create our reality. So I love it. I love what you're doing, and just remind us real quick again how people stay connected with you, and what's the best way to connect with you to take those next steps. Remind us one more time.
Okay. I would say go to my website, patricelynn.com, and that's spelled P-A-T. Oh, I guess you can see it on the screen. PATRICELYNN.com.
Yep.
I was so excited that I could get my own name. That was one of those quantum things too, because I was like, it was available right when I needed it.
Wow.
So go there. And then I have, like I said, on the homepage is the brain training checklist, but that's also on the page with the free gifts. Okay. And I have a few other things that you can download, and just get on my mailing list, and then I'll be able to keep in touch. Now, when you first get on there, I have a series of things that come quickly every day, but I'm not one of those people that sends you an email every day on a regular basis. Matter of fact, I need to get better at staying. But I've been developing a lot of stuff, so as I'm developing more, I can do that. And and then on my website, I have a contact form as support@patricelynn.com. That's a way that you could reach out. And then I have some, virtual assistants and people that will help.
Awesome.
Make sure you get your questions answered.
So beautiful. I love it. I love it, Patrice. You are a superstar. Thank you so much for coming on today, sharing your wisdom. And everyone who's listening, definitely stay connected with Patrice. Go to her website, patricelynn.com. Sign up for her mailing list. Go get her free gifts and downloads and amazing things. And go get her book because it's going to rock your world. And Patrice, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do and combining your experience, your wisdom, your expertises. It's really beautiful. I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm just honored to be part of your show, and I love what you're doing as well.
Thank you.
You're making it happen.
That's right. Every day, really becoming our greatest possible selves. Patrice, keep up the amazing work, and we'll see you soon, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Take care.